Hello everyone, this is Jotto and welcome to a Spellweaver video. Now, a couple things before I start. This is a video about some stuff which I think, not that I'd like to see, but even though I would like to see most of these changes, but stuff that I feel needs to be changed in the upcoming patch, which happens at the beginning of every season roughly in Spellweaver. Now, it's no secret that changes are expected as the metagame evolves because you have to balance out certain things, and it's beta, so you can edit as much as you like. So that's no secret. Now, first of all, something else is that the opinions in this video are not just my own. They are mine plus my 3 teammates. I've got some pieces from each one of them, all the Acebreakers Spellweaver players, which is Senelion, Raijan, and Kindle. And I've got a bit from each of those, and between us we play pretty much every deck in the format, or have played every deck in the format, and have even invented a few, in the case of like Senelion's Burning Rage type thing. So anyway, so keeping that in mind, I'm going to be splitting this particular video into 2 different segments. First of all is balance, and the second one's design. Those are linked, but they're not quite the same, and you'll see what I mean. So as far as balance goes, at the moment we have a bit of an issue where some decks are way too powerful and some decks are really weak. So on the weak side of things we've got corruption. Basically corruption's really bad. Nature is quite bad, but the point is it has its own subsection, whereas corruption is just awkward. But in the case of the too strong thing, which is what matters more, we've got Wisdom Dominion, which is the best deck, not close. And then we've got Order, Mono Order Angels, which is going to be a topic we're going to talk about in both design and balance, is also too powerful, but it's suppressed by Wisdom Dominion, which everything is. Now, I want to point out that I've actually been playing Wisdom Dominion as my deck of choice in this latter season, not because I like the deck, but because I like winning. That's basically why I think the deck is completely overpowered, and I feel like a lot of people have been focusing on Silencer. Silencer is too good, yes. However, it's not the main issue. The main issue is Dominion. It really is. I mean, Dominion is a very broken aspect in general. It's way too powerful in terms of its controlling aspect. It has everything. It has life gain, removal, board sweepers. You can steal things, card draw. It's just ridiculous. It has the best creature in the game, arguably, in Karthus. So it's really kind of insane just how good Dominion is. And it just has everything that you can use. Now, the wisdom half of this is basically Silencer, extra card draw, and Ramp in New Horizons. Now, I don't think wisdom is the overpowered aspect. I think Silencer is the only card that's too powerful in that section, and I would actually recommend just changing it to 5 energy. I think that's what I'd recommend. Maybe 5 energy, or like make it... I think the suggestion I have earlier was 8 energy, but then it also accounts levels, not just mana. So the idea is it always counters its own requirements in energy. I don't know if that's too weak. It's not that bad actually. I mean, if it was 5 energy, it would make it worse against Karthus, same against Dragonfire, same against Cataclysm roughly, better against New Horizons, but that's already a strange counter. Things like that. So I think that would actually be fine. As far as... Actually, it'd be the same against New Horizons. Yeah, so I actually think that'd be fine. But anyway, the idea is you can test stuff, but it's currently too strong. Now, Karthus I feel is still too strong. I feel like it should have 3 life or something, just so it's actually killable without hard removal, i.e. Dominion. It's very difficult to kill a Karthus in general right now. Rage can't kill it, really. Nature can't deal with it, period. Dominion, Wisdom Dominion mirror matches are very silly because it just becomes like... Karthus isn't really used for the removal, it's used for life gain wins, which are also bizarre. And it means that you've got this strange dance. Because they have Helmet Dominion, other Karthus's Cataclysm. They have all the ways of dealing with Karthus, which means that Karthus becomes life gain win, as opposed to removal in the mirror. And basically the point is Karthus is too powerful. Now, the other thing I want to talk about in terms of Wisdom Dominion is Advanced Despina. Now, Advanced Despina is debatably broken right now, and if you see the white flash of light thing come up, it's because I'm checking my notepad. But Advanced Despina is debatably too powerful, is what I've been playing. Part of that is because it gets gnomes from your opponent's deck under Silencer to kill their Silencer. But there's another thing which I actually feel is really broken and should not exist at all. No matter what, it is the most broken mechanic in the game, which is getting legendary creatures. It's ridiculous. Like, I've been playing Advanced Despina almost solid for 3 weeks now, and it's insane. I don't know why that exists. Basically, what you can do with Advanced Despina is you can get a legend out of their deck, put it in play, and it kills their legendary just by existing. Like, you play it from their deck, it kills their legend instantly, and then you already get a trade out of your hero power. You already get an advantage. And the problem with this is in a couple situations. First of all, Ramgath is annoying. Second of all, Fia, getting Fia on turn 4 or 5. I've done this with New Horizons, it depends. But yeah, I've done this to kill their Fia and then kill a Goblin, and then it gets like a Fireball or something out of their hand. It's just insane. And it also means that Advanced Despina mirror matches are the stupidest games of Spellweaver you will ever play. Because it literally turns into Silencer, 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 Karthus, I get your Karthus, you get my Karthus, and then you play your own Karthus, killing my Karthus that was yours. Then you kill another one of my creatures, and then I helm your Karthus, and accidentally kill the Karthus that is now mine by getting your... It actually happens, and it's really stupid. It's one of these stupidest interactions. And I remember reading, there was a post, actually made by Kindle, funnily enough, but I didn't know that until yesterday. But there was a post made about the legend rule and how it works with Despina. And the logic was that you can legend rule your own stuff away from Helm and away from Sleep and things like that, so you can choose which one you want, things like that. Yes, that sounds okay in theory, however in practice, having the Despina interaction is way worse than not being able to get it out from a Sleep or a Helm. Just way worse for the game. It's horribly confusing, and it creates situations that are confusing to people that play Advanced Despina for months. It's still complicated, and I still win games every so often when my opponent does something really silly, like has a Karthus on the board and he's playing Advanced Nephros, and then kills my Karthus, right? He plays it, it like legends a Karthus, he's like, what happened there? And then he reanimates the Karthus and it kills his new one. Because they're both controlled by the same, they're both owned by the same player. Now, what I would do to fix this is actually just change the legend rule from own to control. There really isn't a reason for the ownership thing when it comes to legends. It's really silly. As I said, like the Sleep Helm thing, they could both be countered by gnomes and artifact removal and spell removal. The whole legending out shenanigans is really dumb. And it really shouldn't exist. It's overpowered and it leads to really unfun games, and those are two things you don't want. Whenever legending's happening, basically no one's happy. Competitive players aren't happy, new players aren't happy, people who are just like having fun aren't happy. No one's happy when that's happening because it's just so silly, and it creates really dumb games. So that's my little segment about Dominion Wisdom, and I sound really harsh about it, but honestly, it's really stupid. I actually had a week without a loss with that deck. I played 5 games a day, and then it was like 2 and then 1 because I didn't need to. And I was sitting at rank 1, and I actually had a week without losses. This was last week, by the way, until today when I was doing some other grinding. But the point is that I played for a week without a loss. That should never happen. It shouldn't happen. The deck is way too powerful. Anyway, so the next thing is Order. This is the other deck that I think is too strong. Now, Order is a mix between design and balance, which is why I'm saying it now. We're going to focus on the balance issues first. Now, the problem with Order is that if it wasn't for Dominion, which is broken, Dominion is overpowered. If it wasn't for Dominion, Order completely annihilates everything else. It's really not close. It's kind of silly, but it just overpowers everything. Because with Alexa, with Advanced Alexa, you get angels out of your deck. They're the best creatures in the game, arguably. They're up there with Phoenix and Karthus. They're just insane creatures that just overpower everything for their cost. And if you're not playing Dominion, guess what? You're screwed. That's basically how that works. And it's really kind of dumb how badly it crushes things like Nature and Rage, and Corruption can kind of fight it if they get a really good opening. And Wisdom, again, can kind of fight it. Mono Wisdom's okay against it if you draw sleeps. But even then, if they get a good opening, you're done. And it's just not, it's not really a winnable matchup. Now, Order has a favorable matchup against everything in the game apart from Wisdom Dominion, because it's just insane. Like, you can have 3 Spell Wardens out and you still lose. And then the other strange one is One Turn Heal, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Because One Turn Heal isn't as much of a balance issue, it's more of a design issue, so we'll get there. Now, the other half of Angels, and I don't know how you nerf Angels because I don't have enough experience playing the deck, it's more playing against it, which, again, is even skewed in my mindset because, like, I know the deck is overpowered, but I play Wisdom Dominion, which means I never have any issues with it. So my opinions are a bit skewed there, not in the way you'd expect. You'd expect me to think it's not strong enough, but I don't know what you change, I just know there's something wrong there. Now, as far as design goes, we'll start, since we're on the topic of Angels, and I said One Turn Heal, Word of Grace needs to go. It's not, like, keep in mind, I ran this past Raijan, the guy who made One Turn Heal, and he thinks it's a dumb card. Just pointing that out, how ridiculous that is. He's been playing One Turn Heal to grind up to for the end of the season, and the point is, it's Word of Grace is still stupid. It's still really dumb, because what it creates is, regardless of it being overpowered or not, it enables Angels and also One Turn Heal to have a win condition that involves absolutely no interactivity from their opponent. You can't stop it unless you're playing Dominion, because you can get a Spell Warden out of his deck to name it, or you can use Mind Extortion. But you can't interact with it. Newer players barely understand why they lost, because the 40 life thing is something you encounter the first time. You're like, how did that happen? And it's very sudden, especially against One Turn Heal. It's very sudden when they just go One Turn Heal, Thaumic, and they just, it's called One Turn Heal for a reason, where they're at 10 life and they just gain 30 in one turn. This has happened. And it's stuff like that is just, it's weird. It's not good for the game to just win out of nowhere with no interactivity from your opponent, and it's not good to have a deck that gives your opponent the feeling of hopelessness, where they just can't do anything. And this is where Wisdom Dominion is also a problem, where it gives you hopelessness. Well, I made the joke that before I recorded this was a couple of hours ago, the top 3 at the time was me, Clone, and Raijan, playing Wisdom Dominion, Angels, and One Turn Heal. And I made the joke that I was playing the most interactive deck of the 3, and I'm playing a deck that is designed to lock my opponent out of playing cards with silencers. That's not a sentence that should exist. It's just a case of interactivity is what you need to have a fun game, and Word of Grace is the least interactive card in the game, I'm pretty sure, along with Dreadful Nightmares. But Dreadful Nightmares isn't strong enough to be dumb. It's just Word of Grace is strong enough to be really silly. So moving on from that, interactivity is a bit of an issue right now, where a lot of the aspects don't interact at all. It's really strange. Order doesn't interact ever nowadays because of Angels. I mean, Guardian, the funniest games you can ever see to watch, just of how absurd it is 2 Guardians on both sides of the field in Order mirror matches. Nothing happens. Like, nothing happens. No one can attack. And part of the reason for this is that Ray of Righteousness has the Order restriction, which I think should be removed, because, not because it would make the card better to the point where it's like overpowered, but it just is a silly interaction. I know that flavor-wise, the Righteousness Ray can't kill Order creatures, but in terms of balance-wise, it does lead to some really silly mirror matches, where Ray of Righteousness actually does nothing in the mirror, and Order can't deal with Guardian in any way, which means that Order mirror matches are just a big stalemate until someone draws Triangelica and wins. Now, something about that should show that there's something strange going on there in terms of uninteractivity, where the most effective way of playing the mirror is to do nothing for the entire game. And that's a bizarre way of looking at it, but it is kind of creative, because you've got Word of Grace, you have Triangelica, encouraging you to sit on your guys instead of using them, and also Guardian punishes attacking, but it's not very good on offense against other Guardians because they're 3/4s, right? So as a result, no one can ever attack, and Pacify again punishes interactivity. Pacify is not a bad card to have in the game, but the point is that everything added together creates an aspect that doesn't like interacting. And so that's a problem there. Then you've got Dominion, again, an aspect that punishes your opponent for interacting with Karthus, Helm of Dominion, Cathedral of the Night, and like, oh, it's so silly. Something else you can tell is, if you look at mirror matches, you can really see, because there's no balance issues in a mirror match, you're both favored, basically, because it just depends on your deck building and things like that. So you can throw out the balance issues and just look at design in mirror matches. And mirror matches are a bit skewed, because I mean, like, Rage mirror matches are all about trading, even though the deck is very aggressive and just goes to the face most of the time. Whereas in the mirror match, it's all about trading. However, the point is, the fact that it's all about trading means that Rage is, regardless of whether you think it's overpowered or underpowered or whatever, the thing is that it shows that there's some sort of design that's correct there. Whereas Wisdom Dominion mirrors, especially the Dominion side of things, get really silly. They get to like 3 cards left in deck because both decks have no actual efficient way of killing each other, and no one can keep a creature on the board. No one can. You get more than 2 creatures on the board, Cataclysm. If you have less than 2 creatures on the board, Helm of Dominion, Sacrifice to draw a card, Karthus, Silencer locks you out for a time until someone gets a gnome out of their deck. It turns into a really silly, just where you're punished for interacting, because if you interact, your opponent gains life and gets closer to winning. Because they play Karthus and then they use Cathedral, killing another dude, they assassinate. It's just there's so much removal that it results in a situation where the only creatures you have to play are super late game in the case of Karthus, and super early game in the case of Library Guards. Well, Library Guards is good at all points, but things like Protector, Assassin, and Disquisitive Spirit. These are just consistency boosters and defensive creatures in the early game. That's all they serve. Because that's all you need to do, right? You just defend until mid-game and then you win. So, in terms of design aspects, that shows that I think Dominion is a bit too control-heavy, to the point when it actually creates games where no one can keep a creature on the board for more than a turn, if they're lucky. So Dominion is too lopsided in that regard, and then a lot of their early game pressure stuff is really awful, to the point when, if I had to recommend a suggestion for how to balance Dominion in terms of design, not just balance, because balance-wise you just nerf the controlling aspect, right? However, in terms of design, what I would do is try and shift some of their stuff to a more early game perspective that encourages creatures. Things like Thunderstorm Titan, things like Shadowblade Assassin, these are good interactive things on the board. That's why they're okay. Things, even the normal Assassin, the 2-mana 1/2, is not a badly designed card, because it encourages interactivity. No one feels like they're getting destroyed by it, because it's always a trade, but the thing is that it's a good card, but it's also a well-designed card, because it creates interactivity. Temperature to Sea also fits in this interactivity, but the point is there's not enough support, because if you're playing Dominion, why don't you just play Control with all the insane stuff? So that's kind of how the Dominion design stuff goes. As far as Rage and Nature goes, I think they're really well designed. I actually went through this on stream, I went through all the aspects, and I think Rage and Nature are very well designed. I think they're very, very good. Corruption is a bit clunky, and maybe this will be fixed in future sets as they get more cards, which I think Corruption, maybe give it a buff on 1 or 2 cards. I don't know what. May give it a buff on 1 or 2 cards. I mean, Senelion gave up on building Corruption decks because they weren't good enough. If Senelion gives up on a color, it's because it's not good enough, just saying, because he will spend weeks trying to figure it out, and he just couldn't. So I would recommend buffing Corruption in some way. I don't know how. You'd have to think about it. It's not urgent, but just buff it in some way, and in a future card set they get more options, then it irons it out. Now, the last aspect I want to talk about is Wisdom, because Wisdom I feel like has the easiest to fix, but most hilarious misdesign of any aspect. Now, keep in mind that this video is supposed to kind of go over the good stuff and the bad stuff. I think Spellweaver is an amazing game, and there's just a couple issues here and there, which is expected because it's a beta. The thing is that you want to be fixing these. That's why I made this video, is to give some sort of recommendations for how to fix some stuff, since there's a lot of sort of confusion going on. Now, in terms of wisdom, there's something about wisdom which always results in it being a support color. Always a support color. No questions. It's always a support color. Can't go base blue. Are you crazy? You can't go base blue. Now, I at first thought that this was because of New Horizons, things like that. Having looked at it more, and I only realized this when I tried building a mono blue deck. The reason for it is because they have no 1 or 2 drops. That's why Wisdom is a support color. Because if you look at this, and I realized this when I was trying to build Tempo Wisdom, and everyone else, like, once I figured it out, people were like, actually you're right. But there's 1 1-drop, 2 2-drops, and 8 3s. There's so many 3-drops, and most of the good ones are, like Gnome and Shielder and Foundry Engineers, are 1 blue, 1 general with 2 mana. So as a result, because there's no reason to start blue, besides Disquisitive Spirit and New Horizons feeds into a supporting role for blue, there's basically no reason to start blue unless you're ramping, which feeds into a more base in the other color. And Library Guards, 1 blue, 1 general, you've got all these things that are 1 blue, 1 general, and there's no reason to start blue if you're trying to play creatures, so why would you? So as a result, blue is the most supporting color in the entire game, and that's why I always find it kind of insane where people talk about blue being the most played color. Blue is the most played color because it fits everywhere, because the entire color can be splashed, the whole thing. Now, on one side of things, this means that it's the most versatile color. On the other side of things, it means it loses its identity, because blue is basically just the, I'm the alternate color for this deck color. Anyway, but yeah, so for Wisdom Dominion, it's base Dominion with blue because why not? Because blue is the best supporting color, so why not use it? And this was true for when Lamp, before Lamp got nerfed, blue was the supporting color in aggro decks because why not? Blue's the best supporting color. There's the pattern. Now, I would actually suggest fixing this by changing 1, maybe 2 of their many 3-drops, and by 3-drop I mean turn 3, not 3 mana. Changing 1, maybe 2 of their many 3-drops to a 2-drop, or maybe a 1-drop, or something, or maybe a 4-drop. They only have Library Guards there. Just spread out the curve a bit, maybe make a 4-drop like the same requirements as Library Guards, but double blue and make it like decently playable, so that it's an attractive aspect for going into mono blue, or maybe not even mono blue, just base blue. Maybe make Jinna Wishes more powerful and make it double blue, so encourage base blue, things like that. But there was suggestions to change Frost Elemental, made by Senelion, funnily enough. But there was a suggestion to change Frost Elemental, and a lot of people suggested 2 mana, 2 resource, things like that. My suggestion would be, if you're actually thinking of changing it, which I feel like you should, because blue needs an identity besides just support color, I would actually change it to a 2-drop. Make it a 2-drop, give it some variation of its current ability and body, make it a 2-drop, allow Wisdom to be a base color in some regard. Because a lot of cards don't see nearly as much play as they should based on power level at the moment, like Lamp. Even Dust Titan doesn't even stand a chance of being played, because why would you play a base blue deck? It's the best supporting color, and it only supports. So that's my quick rundown of sort of the design of each aspect, but the basic summary of this is the 2 best design aspects are Nature and Rage. Why? Because every card they have introduces interactivity with your opponent. Even things like Tornado Outbreak, which you may say that discourages interactivity, kind of, but nowhere near to the same extent as everything else. And the point is, all of their stuff is creature-based. This is an important thing to look at. All of their stuff is creature-based, which means you can kind of plan things out. The least interactive thing about Rage is actually their massive amount of burn. Like, the least interactive card they have is Dragonfire. But the point is, because the rest of their damage comes from creatures, you can still plan around it. You can get some life gain, you can plan around it, you can remove their stuff, play defensively, things like that. So those are the 2 best design aspects in my opinion. And then you've got, on one side of the other thing, you've got Order and Dominion, which are not interactive at all. Then you've got Wisdom with basically no identity, and Corruption is just a bit weak. But overall, Corruption's reasonably well designed, it's just a bit weak. That's the only thing about Corruption. So as I said, I'm not trying to be too negative. I actually think the game is really good. The game's really amazing, but the point is you want to move forward, and that's why I made this video. But anyway, so that's my rundown of everything, and I feel like a lot of the balance changes are in the section of need to happen, whereas the design changes are things which some of them need to happen, like Word of Grace, whereas other ones should just be thought about before releasing the game in full. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback or want to just talk to me about some of the stuff I mentioned, put it in the comment section below. I'll also be reading the forum post that this is going to be in. But anyway, as for now, this has been Jotto, signing off.